Elder Scrolls Online has been out for 5 years now. I played ESO during the beta and its initial PC release back in 2014. I recently picked up the Elsewhere expansion on Steam and it feels almost like a completely new game with the changes that have been made since its initial PC release. So today I wanted to bring you my 10 reasons why you should return to or play ESO for the first time in 2020. Let's go. At launch back in old 2014, if I was to describe ESO to you, I'd honestly tell you it was just another MMO and there wasn't really anything special about the game. It didn't really feel like an Elder Scrolls game, just your normal like run-of-the-mill MMOs with a little bit of Elder Scrolls paint over the top. But now, in 2020, I wouldn't call ESO an MMO at all. I mean, it has that standard group content and whatnot, which I'll touch on a bit later, and the one Tamriel update was big too. However, now in ESO, I can confidently call it an Elder Scrolls role-playing game. You can just also play with your friends. There is an insane amount of quests in this game, even just in the base game, which gives you the 3 factions main story zones, which equals 18 zones in total, not including the Morrowind expansion, which is included in the base game now as well. The Craglong zone, which is a group content zone, and Cyrodiil, which is an open world PvP zone. As well as separate to this, you can also purchase the Homestead expansion, the Elsewhere expansion, 13 DLC packs ranging from new zones to dungeons, all available for purchase separately or by subscribing to the ESO Plus service, which gives you all of them included in the service except for the latest expansion, which is currently Elsewhere. Even this is a change, as back at launch you had to subscribe if you wanted to play ESO. The best part about this is that none of it's mandatory and you can still have a blast solo questing, doing dungeons, group content, PvP, whatever you like, just for the price of the base game. Included in all of these packs, we now have the Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood, which were added later after release. But more importantly, what these DLCs also add to the game is that you can steal and kill your way through any city even without actually purchasing the DLCs. This will get a bounty on your character's head and NPCs will hunt you down relentlessly for the reward. None of this was here at launch, and the cities and their NPCs often felt lifeless, which is a common factor for NPCs where major cities are basically filled with lifeless people just wandering around to fill the empty space. But in Elder Scrolls games, this shouldn't be the case, and it's partly why at launch I thought the game just felt like another MMO. Everything in the world, including the NPCs, should be as interactable as possible, and with these additions it really adds to the role-playing elements that can be achieved in this game, as well as, you know, if you want to play like a rogue badass and just kill everyone on sight, you can do that now, and you can pick up all of the armor and weapons and stuff you find in the world. It just adds to player agency and makes the world feel more alive. Player agency and the freedom it allows you is one of the pillars of an Elder Scrolls game, and now in ESO, it feels like ZeniMax really understand that, and the game benefits from that significantly, which directly leads into my next point. Level scaling. In 2016, the game released a 1 Tamriel update. The main focus of this update was making any content available to the player at any time by level scaling the world around them. With most MMOs out there and with ESO at launch, you had to follow the content based on your level, creating a very linear experience, and this is not fit for an Elder Scrolls game. With the 1 Tamriel update, you as the player can explore any zone, do any quest, regardless of the level, and the content will scale to you. You can even do a lot of the group content with players at different levels to you. So if you have friends that already play ESO, you can group up with them and you can all enjoy the game together. Everything that has been added to ESO since this update follows the same philosophy. So if you pick up the game today, you don't want to play the old content, you can just start in the Elsewhere zone at level 1. The Homestead, Elsewhere, and I believe the Morrowind expansion as well also came with their own tutorial zone, so you don't even have to touch the old content. So you can start right away in Elsewhere with the new Necromancer class and away you go. Speaking of the new classes, let's get into point 3. One of ESO's strengths, in my opinion, even at launch, is that despite what class you pick, you're not really limited to that class's skill lines. Each class has 3 skill lines, yes, a DPS, a tank, and a healing line. However, you have weapon skill lines, racial skill lines, PvP skills, crafting skills, and guild skill lines ranging from Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, and Sigil Order. And once you hit max level, you can further develop your character with the addition of champion points, which are like passive buffs that you choose for your character to further specialize in a specific style. These champion point systems weren't available at launch, and this is another addition to the game that has happened since then. ESO originally launched with 4 classes: Dragon Knight, Templar, Sorcerer, and Nightblade. I made a Templar at launch, and I mostly played as a tank or a DPS, and with the addition of the Morrowind and Elsewhere expansions, we now have 2 new classes. The Wardens, which came with the Morrowind expansion. The Wardens are the Defenders of the Green, master storytellers whose nature tales become magical realities. They wield frost spells against enemies and summon animals to aid them. The Warden's most notable ability is the Bear Companion ultimate, which is like a permanent summoned bear that will fight for you in in battle. The most recent class addition to ESO is the Necromancer, which came with the Elsewhere expansion. Necromancers are masters of the elemental damage that protect themselves with bone and flesh shields while buffing themselves and other players with their living death magic. One of the most notable abilities for the Necromancer is the Bone Goliath transformation, turning yourself into a giant skeletal creature and you can just punch the crap out of everything. You can also bring all sorts of dead enemies back to life to fight for you, and if you choose to play as the Necromancer, you need to be careful where you sport your new undead living magic abilities, because this type of magic is outlawed in Tamriel. Using your abilities in the capital cities will have the guards hunting you down, and that just leads into the role-playing aspects that I was talking about earlier. Now that you know about the content and you've picked your class, it's really time to get into the group content, which leads us into number 4. I remember playing ESO on PC back at launch, and there wasn't really your typical dungeon finder. You had to use a group finder where you would say what activity you were looking for, and then it would group you with people that were following for the same activity, and then you still had to go to the dungeon and start that activity. It was a really lengthy, drawn out process, and I believe it was in 2016 ESO added a proper dungeon finder with daily rewards for doing random dungeons, along with being able to select specific dungeons. Not only has this streamlined the group content experience, there are so many new dungeons for you to dive into, as well as like raid-like content called Trials, which was added with the Craiglawn Zone update if you want to dive into 12-man group content. They've also added trials with each of the new chapters that they've been adding as well. The PvP group content has also expanded significantly since the launch of ESO. We only had the Cyrodiil Zone, which is an open world PvP zone with 3 factions fighting for control over the zone and the Imperial City. Siege weapons and all sorts of crazy things that happen when 100 players are on your screen at once. The PvP modes have been expanded since then with the addition of Battlegrounds, which is a 4v4 PvP game mode, each with its own different objectives like team deathmatch, capture the flag, that sort of thing. And there are also some more unique ones with each of the paid DLCs. However, Battlegrounds is now in the base game as well, so you can get a sample of this mode without an additional cost. There are also daily rewards for the Battleground activities for those of you that like beating up your fellow community members. Speaking of the community, I've been playing ESO for about a month now and lurking in the ESO subreddit, as I usually do in most subreddits. I can tell you that there is a passion and love for this game from the community, and even at the Bethesda E3 conference, you can tell that people are hyped for this game.
Thank you. Yeah! And
there are constantly posts on the subreddit asking for advice, and people are always accommodating and helpful. I myself have experienced this as well. I asked for advice in the game and have been greeted with nothing but positivity. There is a specific case that I remember just after I started playing. I had kind of figured out how my DPS build was going to work, and I decided to jump into the dungeon finder and queue for a random veteran dungeon. I mean, what a great idea, right? I just started playing. Let's jump back in on my max level character and queue for a veteran dungeon. We died on the first boss and the tank left. Now, being anxious about my performance, as most men are, I asked in the party chat, how was it? Did I do good? It's my first time. And the healer responded saying that, he didn't really know why the tank left, and I was doing great. And through the rest of the dungeon, they gave me quick boss fight information in the chat just before the fight, so I know what I needed to do. It was great from the other players to be so accommodating for a noob like me, and I think that plays a massive factor when you're playing a game for the first time or returning to a game, is that how the players react to you, and it really feeds into your enjoyment of the game. If the players are really negative to you, it really sours your experience and it turns you away, but I haven't experienced any of that in ESO, and I hope to pay that positive energy forward to any new players that I meet as well. While we're on the topic of features that were added to ESO after launch, in ESO you can now dye your armor, so you can be a beautiful pink Khajiit if you so choose. You can dye your armor in any color you like. You unlock the colors throughout exploring the world and completing certain objectives and achievements. On top of that, there are also so many different armor sets with all the expansions and DLC packs that they've released. It's much easier to make a character that looks like a unique badass than ever before. If memory serves, I think there were 13 different armor sets at launch. According to Vectralife's site, there are now 113 different styles of armor. That's insane. Surely anyone can find a set they really like, and you can also wear costume sets over your armor if you don't like the look of the base gear without affecting your stats. There's so much gear that you can find out in the world and craft yourself, which feeds into point number 7. A feature of ESO that I loved back at launch that hasn't really gone through many changes other than a couple of quality of life improvements is the crafting system. In most of my MMO experience, I'm not much of a crafter. I don't really like looking at menus and making random pieces of gear that aren't really relevant to my character or their build. The difference with ESO is that at any level, even max level, you can create your own armor and weapons that you can use throughout your whole playthrough, as you can upgrade your equipment to be epic or legendary levels just like you would find in the group content or throughout questing. You can also add your own set bonuses to the gear at special crafting locations in each of the zones. With the release of the Somerset expansion, ZeniMax added a new crafting line for rings and necklaces known as jewelry to the already existing blacksmithing, woodworking, clothing, enchanting, and alchemy. The crafting in ESO is rewarding to me because the gear you make is actually good for your character, and while you're leveling, it's typically the easiest and most consistent way to get upgrades to your gear every few levels. It also creates more exploration in the world if you're into the crafting because you can hunt down the materials that you need. There is one type of crafting that I didn't mention, and that is the furniture crafting, which was added with the Homestead update in 2017, which leads us into point number 8. I kind of feel like a broken record at this point, but another feature that was added to ESO after launch is the housing. In 2017, ESO released the Homestead update, allowing players to purchase and decorate the home of their dreams, ranging in size from tiny little caverns to giant mansions and other cool, unique locations. I honestly haven't spent much time in this feature as I'm not much of a house builder myself. However, players can decorate their houses with hundreds of different pieces of furniture that you can find out in the world, get boss heads from clearing dungeons, as well as craft your own furniture to create the house of your Elder Scrolls dreams. Once you've built your dope looking house, invite me over so that I can be envious of your awesome creations, because I sure as hell aren't creative enough for that, and I love looking at sick houses. So now that we've covered a lot of ESO's histories, point 9 and 10 can really relate to where ESO is going in the future and what we can expect throughout 2020. Number 9 is the performance and latency fixes that are coming throughout the first half of 2020 and beyond. ZeniMax Online Studios has announced that along with the usual content updates that have been coming each year for ESO, they are also focusing on improving the game and the server performances for all platforms in late 2019 and continuing through 2020. The first patch of this has already gone live, focusing on memory management overhaul and the behind the scenes combat ability improvements, as well as complete rewrite to the looking for group system, which did have a couple of bugs when it initially launched, but I'm pretty sure that ZeniMax has fixed this, as the Undaunted event, which it was supposed to go live with, did happen over the weekend, and I played it and I didn't have any issues. In the next major patch update 25, we should see a patching overhaul, which will unfortunately mean that every player will have to re-download the game, but it should make future patching much more quicker, faster loading fixtures and players, more behind the scenes combat ability improvements, the first run of frame rate improvements for all systems, and in the update 26 after that, we should see server optimization and stability, focusing on how pets are handled by the server and how players are loaded as well. Hopefully this will stop those silhouette player effects that you sometimes get when models are still loading. We should also get more frame rate improvements along with another pass of combat abilities, focusing on the AoE abilities and how they're handled on the server side. Even this alone is a huge list of changes, and it really shows ZeniMax's commitment to providing a quality product rather than just pumping out expansion after expansion for the continual profit. I seriously doubt that these changes will increase revenue in really any specific way, but this is really showing that ZeniMax is listening to the fan base and trying to make the game an overall smoother and better experience for everyone. ZeniMax has also said that they're going to look at adding a Q3 and Q4 list of improvements to this already impressive list once we get closer to update 26, so keep an eye on their official channels for that. The last big point, but also the shortest point at this point, why am I saying point so much? If I haven't convinced you to try ESO this year, then there's one more thing to cover, and that is the Dark of Heart Skyrim expansion. At the Game Awards 2019, we got a final cinematic for the Elsewhere expansion. At the end of it, we got a little tease for what's coming next for ESO. Our heroes will finally be returning to Skyrim, and next year in the Dark of Heart expansion. Similar to the Season of the Dragon and the Elsewhere expansion from last year, the Dark of Heart expansion is ESO's year-long event, which will include 3 DLC packs and the chapter being the big expansion like Morrowind, Somerset, Elsewhere. ZeniMax Online Studios hasn't announced much more information other than this, but the expansion will be fully revealed on January 16th, which I believe is this week, so let's all be hyped for that. Whew, this is a long video, probably one of my longest, and I haven't even touched on the collectibles which have been added to the game, like mounts, pets, busts, costumes, that sort of thing, or spoken about the combat at all, which I find enjoyable if you find a class and a build that you like. And it was announced last year that there were 13.5 million active players for the game as well. ESO continues to expand, and it's a perfect time to jump in. The base game is regularly on sale for over half price. Like, I picked up the latest expansions and the base game at 67% off. You don't really need the subscription service just to enjoy the game and to jump in for the first time. If you like MMOs, or even if you just like Elder Scrolls games, for such a small entry cost when it's on sale, it's definitely worth giving it a shot this year. And I think with the Skyrim DLC, this game is going to take a massive leap again, just like it did last year. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on ESO, if you've played it, if you're going to play it, and what you think about the Skyrim reveal, which is going to happen this week. That's all from me today. My name is NorZZa. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.
Sweet moon sugar cane, sweet moon sugar cane, sweet moon sugar cane.